Ready? Hundreds of extras running around.
At least 20 different islands.
3 large pirate ships.
900 pieces.
A couple of 100,000 gold coins.
Everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
It's been rather challenging.
It was really fun.
We get to do this.
It's way more intense than anything I've done before.
Nice. Excellent.
I hope it's a real entertaining, fun ride.
You don't know what this is, do you? Aztec gold.
My agent called and said, how do you feel about a pirate movie? Those don't come along that often. Sprawling, epic, pirate movie.
The way you get an audience to really embrace a movie is go against the grain. Get somebody you'd never expect to be in a movie.
I mean, come on, it's Johnny, Orlando, Jeffrey, and Kira. I mean, you can't go wrong.
I think there's a John Huston quote that says, I relieve myself of the rigors of directing by casting the movie correctly, and that certainly happened here.
Not sure I deserve that. Giselle.
It's sort of like a childhood dream, isn't it? You know, be able to be a pirate.
Damn it, Jack, I was almost liking you.
I know.
I thought this guy has got to be just a dirty fighter. He just had a sword on his belt, probably from the time he was about 13, and just knew how to hack off heads and skewer people.
The moonlight shows us what we really are.
She's a modern girl stuck in an 18th century world, so she's great fun to play.
Will's love for her, he's quite straight-laced, but it's like if you imagine him in one of those kind of corsets that Kira wears. It's like really tight at the beginning of the movie, and he's like can hardly breathe, and everything's kind of really tense. As the movie moves through and as Will kind of grows, he sort of starts to untie the lace, as it were, and he kind of starts to breathe more and kind of become more of a real person.
As much as my daughter might like him, his prospects aren't very good, and I'd be much happier if she married Commodore Norrington.
Norrington is basically the scourge of piracy in the Eastern Caribbean.
Pirate?
I suppose I bring light where there is dark and air freshener to where pirates have recently vacated.
We could use a few more ideas.
It was so much fun, and it looks like so much fun when you see it. You know, you're going to come out of there and be bubbling with excitement.
I get the feeling that people don't really make films like this much anymore.
What's missing now that was there in that golden age of Hollywood? It was those great character actors under contract. And that was what we did as we were writing this screenplay. We said, we're going to feature these guys, and we're going to make their characters a fun and interesting and important part of the story.
Open fire!
We've got so much in terms of the story and the characters, and who knows what and who doesn't know what, and who's going to take advantage of who.
This is my first time on a Bruckheimer production, and it's quite impressive, I have to say.
We want to make the film entertaining, and the way you make it entertaining is give them curveballs all the time and fastballs. It's called Pirates of the Caribbean, so you don't want to shoot it in Long Beach, you want to shoot it in the Caribbean.
We had a location person that scouted all the way from the Bahamas and Puerto Rico all the way to South America to find the right look of the film.
It's amazing when you scout a film like this, how quickly you realize that the world is, you know, insanely overpopulated. You just go out looking for a cul-de-sac-shaped bay, and to find one that doesn't have a hotel in it, they just don't exist.
We picked St. Vincent because it didn't have much. You know, it had a few piers in the water. We extended that one pier. We built a couple other piers, and then we augmented a couple of existing buildings, and then we added to the town so we could make it look like our universal backlot.
What do you need? trouble.
It was a huge challenge. We had to call upon some of the neighboring islands to kind of help support the size movie we had. The airport only handles small planes, so we chartered a 747 and flew into St. Lucia and then brought everybody over by boat. We brought about 400 people, and we, I think, bought about every hotel room on the island. And then we've hired several hundred of the local St. Vincent population to work on the crew as well.
Here's the lunch boat.
Everything that they say about water movies is true. You know, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, you know? Just feeding the crew when you're, because as soon as you start shooting, in the morning, you're 4 miles out. So suddenly you've got this kind of armada behind you trying to catch up, chasing you know, just with sandwiches.
We brought 99% of everything with us. Yeah, because we did a lot of manufacturing on this job. And the thing that's hard when you're doing a period piece like this is the availability of quantity. It's almost impossible. So what you typically have to do are research certain items and then manufacture them.
These two guys on this platform looking that way, you guys looking out to sea.
Marineland is a closed-up amusement park. We built a fort there. So once we scouted the St. Vincent, we found the direction of the sun, and we found a location that matched that so that when we built our fort, the sun path would be exactly the same.
That fort is made of cement and plaster skins. It's all a facade. It's all smoke and mirrors. The walls were all framed up with plywood behind them, and we put our skins on it. We knew that there was going to be a lot of talent up on the deck, so those were all framed in lumber and heavy plywood. Then we'd do a metal lath and a concrete base over that. So we basically used a stamping method, just like they stamp concrete for a driveway.
Start the muzzle flash!
We couldn't go to shoot an existing location because the pirates rampage, set it on fire, swing on the chandeliers.
Hello, Poppy.
It's all built from scratch. We built the interior location at the Raleigh Studios, Manhattan Beach, and then we built the exterior facade at Marineland, and then we built a miniature model to do a CG composite in the island at the location it is on the hillside.
The cave set is one of the largest sets built on a stage in Hollywood. And it's a centerpiece in the movie because that's where the cursed treasure is essentially hidden.
We were trying at that point to take a little bit of the Disney feel in the cave and the ride at Disneyland. So we came up with the concept that the Aztec gold is hidden in this volcanic cave in the mountains.
It took about 5 months to build it, you know, with over 100 craftsmen working on it. It was partly sculpted out of styrofoam and partly built with wood framed and plastered.
We have basically a little over 4 feet of water, so it's a difficult set to shoot in. It's very tight.
I take a lot of pride in the fact that tank never leaked. You know, I have an excellent crew, and that's what it's all about. I really feel on this film we had the cream of the crop of Hollywood, because everybody just thought it would be really cool to work on.
Ready, here we go.
The pirates are going to be very authentic and have the fear and the loathing that you want them to have, and yet you're going to have a lot of humor with that. So that's why we have gore.
When you make a movie like this, you quite often get up in the morning and go to set and you feel like you're 9 years old back, you know, in the movies that sort of influenced you when you were a child.
God, let's try that again.
Not only are the sets vast and huge and everything, but when you fly out to the Caribbean and you see a whole bay built up to be Port Royal with, you know, 4 or 5 huge tall ships in the harbor and hundreds of extras running around in uniform, and, you know, the undertaking was so big.
When I first heard of the film, I was given a call and I thought, Pirates of the Caribbean, are we going real? Are we going like Disneyland? So we got the script, and then we realized that it was going to be as real a film as possible.
When I walked onto stage 2 and saw the cave for the first time, the initial thing was like, oh, that's very big. But What immediately took over was how beautiful it was and how well designed.
As soon as you start doing research, you find out all of this wonderful stuff about what really happened.
You immediately say Caribbean pirates, and then you start pulling up everything, and you see, you know, photos, and then you go from there, and then you say, well, if he looks like this, then he has to come from this, and his boat would look like this.
Now, this thing will jump back at least 3 feet.
My function is to integrate historical reality with movie reality. My area of expertise is primarily 1500 to 1900 general historical information regarding dress and custom, and then a specific expertise in military history as well.
It goes on the thumb of the gun captain, so that's the prop.
I spoke to props early on about all the appropriate types of swords and weapons. We have 2 types of swords principally, the short swords that you'd refer to as cutlasses, and what are called small swords, the long straight-bladed civilian and officers type swords. We have pistols, we have blunderbusses, which are like short firearms, carbines, and long muskets.
Pirate's best friend.
All the period pieces we pretty much built from scratch. Built over 72 cannons, 4 different sizes, all the carriages for the cannons, all the metalwork for them.
Last time you left me a pistol with 1 shot. With Paris, you're right. Where is Jack's pistol?
Jack's pistol was very important. Gore wanted a real pistol from the 1700s. So we started doing some shopping. He wanted the silver inlaid to be the real stuff from the mid-18th century. The guns that we bought from a dealer in Connecticut, they were made in London by a fellow named Perry in 1760.
Okay, let's go. Shooters, you ready?
And then we did a rental with the other pistols through a company in Los Angeles. They're reproductions.
Our torment is near an end. Yeah!
The biggest set and one of the bigger challenges would be the treasure cave, and just trying to get the sort of quantity that Gore was looking for. This is a huge treasure. You know, these guys have been dumping this stuff here for years.
We have the main treasure chest that we built specifically, and then we have the 882 pieces of Aztec gold, which are a different gold. And there was, like, I would say in the neighborhood of a couple of 100,000 gold coins that we put in there.
We probably had, I can't even think of how many cubic feet of rock that we actually painted to look like gold nuggets, as well as probably hundreds of yards of pearls and a mass of just sort of odd objects, things that would just be looted by the pirates.
It just kept building and kept building, and you know, at that point you're going, oh, is it too far? Is it far enough? You know, because Gore's very specific on his look.
His words were, the pirates aren't art collectors, they were just after the money. So I just went and just scoured all the prop houses and made huge deals with them to say, we want this, you know, this much stuff.
That's great. Yeah, nice. Excellent.
The scope of this film, for me, has been kind of the most extraordinary thing about it. Every day you come into work and you think it can't get any sort of bigger, it is.
Anybody who's been on this ride is going to want to go see this movie because you're going to be part of this enormous adventure.
This is my first Jerry Bruckheimer film, and just from his reputation and the look of his movies and the size and the scope of everything you're doing, you want to make sure that you're not substandard. You want to bring it to the level that Jerry's used to and give it the biggest look that we can get, and not limit the director and not limit the scope of the film.
They started with a lot of research about the Caribbean during that period, and the British sailors and soldiers and ships of that period.
The film was written for 3 ships, mainly. We needed 2 military ships and 1 pirate ship.
You know, we wanted the Dauntless to be like, you know, a 100-gun ship, and there just isn't one. So we ended up building sections of it on a barge and using models. And Similarly for the Black Pearl, which had to kind of be iconic in its own right. It was the ghost ship. It's got shredded sails, it's got all these qualities. So we had to construct that ship.
We also rented a real ship and ended up sailing it all the way down here to the Caribbean.
The Lady Washington plays the Interceptor, the fastest ship in the British fleet. Lady Washington is a period reproduction of the first American vessel to make landfall on the Pacific Northwest coast back in 1789.
We went in and repainted the entire boat, changed the inside, cut gun ports for the cannons that we made for the boat. We made a ship's wheel, changed the stern of it. We changed the color completely. The color combination matched the same Royal Navy ship that we did for the Dauntless.
In LA, we did approximately 49 days of preparation to the vessel. That's when the majority of the set dressing happened, making the boat look the way the art department wanted it to look for this film.
We're provided with all the blueprints from the art department, and they're pretty adamant about being period correct. We had 3 large pirate ships that we built from scratch, 2 that were actually seaworthy that we built on top of steel barges, and 1 that was built in the dome over at Long Beach.
The Black Pearl sails usually at night, and it's in the full moonlight. We have heavy fog, so we did the fog test out in the open waters, and we saw that that was going to be pretty difficult to shoot in the water, so we decided to shoot it in the Spruce Goose Dome. And then we're building that exact boat again on top of the barge where it can be taken out into the open seas and then sailed. The Dauntless came from it's the British Royal Navy flagship. So we built that on a considerably larger barge because we had about 165 feet on deck, and built the front section, the stern, and the bow.
They're little fine bits of sculpture around the stern of the ship. The sails are all built to scale. Everything, it's all very carefully researched.
They hadn't told me that I'd be steering the ship until, basically, camera was rolling.
It was really fun because we just sort of sailing this huge ship on the open seas. I just looked over my shoulder one time and there's Johnny at the wheel with the hat and playing with the gold teeth, the whole look, and there's me just yanking on a rope going, I can't believe I'm doing this.
We were on set several times and we would just kind of giggle at how, we get to do this.
Naturally, Pirates of the Caribbean, everybody thinks that's the ride at Disneyland. We're wanting to bring that feel to the show. And it's fun to go back and do this kind of stuff because now it's like you're creating a ride that someone's going to take in the film.